All right. We're live. Yeah, let's go ahead and give this a nice share.
Share's always good.
Sharing is caring. Oh,
That's what they tell me.
copy
Oh, why?
video.
Why do you not do what I want?
Tech Talk time. Okay, so we talked about a bunch of stuff last week when it came to deciding games in a best of three, but I think today's topics are going to be uh, based around talking about the deck that I've been playing. So I get to talk a little bit of Snorlax, even though you're not on the Snorlax
I'm
all as
not.
much.
We've
What
we've moved
what deck are
off.
you on?
I'm on Gardevoir
Very,
in
very
the
strong play.
it just felt like the right thing to do.
It is a very good deck. And for those who don't know, Gardevoir has in lots of draw power, lots of acceleration through Gardevoir EX, but also just sees a lot of cards and can play a single prize game, can play heavy hitting game, can also snipe the bench, and can also just add damage counters through the new card Screamtail, through Cresselia, through many different cards that are out there in the current format, and it's getting more options. It's going to be interesting to see if Gardevoir does survive Station. I still think there will be options. It'll just play differently. I just think Gardevoir as a card is so inherently strong with that kind of ability to accelerate energy everywhere. Um, Only to psychic Pokemon, but still, there's psychic types have just always had strong support.
Like it's just really good.
Really is. Yeah, and I think there's I've seen a lot of I watched it happen in a game where playing cards like Collapse Stadium and Professor Turo's, you can essentially uh, Professor Turo's being a really good card is like you can set up in a turn where you're like I'm gonna build up multiple threats and then I'm going to pick up my two prizer when the opponent has two prizes left. And you pick up the Gardevoir EX and say, good luck winning the game now. Because you're going to win in your two attacks, right? Or one or two attacks. But they
hmm
but they will lose if they have to take two attacks. They're trying to win in that one attack by killing the big Gardevoir. It's like so Professor Turo's and or Collapse Stadium. Are you
Where are you, Stadium?
Well, Collapse Stadium, there it is. Collapse Stadium, just forcing your bench size down to 4 and your opponent's bench size down to 4, which is always strong. Um,
It's such
uh,
a good card.
but sometimes that can be a good play for you as playing the Collapse is just stadium bump and everything. So, very good. But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit of some. I don't know, did you watch much of LAIC? Did you catch any? Did you
I
pop
didn't get
in?
a chance to catch any of it.
Yeah, well worth watching. Gardevoir had multiple finishes in the top eight, and it had a strong presence in the format. So I think you're making a great choice in that regard. And the finals was Maridon playing Iron Hands EX, which is on card. Um, at the moment, playing Iron Hands and not necessarily playing all in. There was some versions that were playing all in on Iron Hands, but just using Iron Hands as a way. You still have efficient attackers in Raikou and Miraidon itself and Raichu the to kind of play the game. So Iron Hands just allows you to manipulate your turns to take easy two prizes on single prize Pokemon, which is sweet. But the deck ended up playing in the finals against Iron Valiant with Entei. And I think Miraidon might be Iron Valiant's worst matchup, simply because it can't, it doesn't like Miraidon doesn't play little dinky Pokemon outside of Flaffy. Um, uh, so yeah, I think that's kind of why Miraidon ended up taking it. But
I can definitely see that.
Iron Valiant just feasts on these 60 to 70 HP Pokemon. Even like you think a 70 HP Pokemon is safe, but it isn't, weirdly enough. So, because if they, getting into our next, our big topic later about going second, we're trying to figure out how ways to maybe slow this deck down, slow down Roaring Moon, and as well slowing down Miraidon. All these decks that can get those turn two attacks can be really good. It allows you to play a supporter, allows you to um, set up with the extra draw cards and play the game. But if you do kind of allow Iron Valiant to go first, and you only have a 60 HP Pokemon, you could just lose on the spot. So keep that in mind. But we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But very cool to see that if you guys are looking for it, go to Limitless, go to a bunch of places. They have a bunch of options to showcase uh, what decks did well with almost all of the lists added. There's tons of other places that will showcase the um, cards that popping off. So yeah. Cool. Well, let's dive into a little bit of Garchomp because I think you can ask me some questions and lead the way, similar to uh how things went last week, where you talked about Snorlax stall and everything.
100%. You want to send me your deck list currently so I
Yeah.
can import it?
Yep. Gotcha. So at the current moment, we're running a pretty simple, you know, Garchomp of what people have seen as it goes. There's a couple things that I have been adjusting in my play testing because I do think the deck is solid. It's missing something to take it to be incredibly consistent and push it forward. I am not playing the Battle VIP passes. I've been really testing this for the long haul of not playing cards that are dead later. We only have Ultra Balls to essentially pitch cards um, currently, so not playing stuff like Superior Energy Retrieval. And if I was playing the Battle VIP passes, I might, go up to 4. I've also thought about including a single Battle VIP pass, so if I do go second, I can Irida for it and play that. But currently, I am just playing for I want to be able to play the game at every step of the game and have nothing that feels dead. I've
Do you think
Ben, that's a
that
great comment. Thank you.
do you think that not including Battle VIP Pass right now hurts you in the short term while helping you in the long term? Or do you
I
think it's
I
just an
do.
unnecessary card?
I think it does. It does hurt me in the short term some games because talking about Battle VIP Pass in general is it is so often where in games you just don't draw it. And
Mm-hmm.
the games that you don't draw it, you kind of feel like you're not able to play the game. Where, say, I have a slow turn one, but my opponent is not playing a always like turn one attacking for them. They are able to get back into it. But me drawing a turn two nest ball maybe allows me to actually play the game. Where a turn two battle VIP pass is just like, oh, I just lose right here and there. So the positives and negatives to it, there's always going to be that with these cards that have caveats of being able to play at certain times. like a counter catcher being another card where sometimes you're like, oh, I'm ahead. This card is now dead in my hand. That
For
sucks.
sure. Had that happen yesterday. Felt
Yep.
really unhappy.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate the fine words. You're the man, and hoping to see you in the Texas Swing this year. But yeah, so I do think in the long term, I'm understanding the plays. I think I'm getting a lot more value out of stuff like Artisan. I'm able to use my nest balls a little bit, more. I'm using an Ultra Ball to pitch some stuff, knowing that I'm playing the two Super Rods. Um, I do have to be very, very conscientious of my prize mapping and understanding my energy in the deck, not what's in the prizes, understanding what I have available as a resources, which is, to small side point, why I've gone to 11 energies over 10, which I've seen in a lot of lists. I've even seen some run as many as 13, but the inclusion of trekking shoes being a way for me to feel like I can play 11 and feel really good about it and still be able to pitch some with the acceleration of Garchomp to put energies on the board. Yeah, so I do think I think it is helping me in the long run, but it is also allowing me to play more games, even if I am still behind. Getting a turn two nest ball feels so much better than a turn two battle VIP pass. But that's just me
Oh,
looking at the
100%.
one situation where battle VIP pass is bad, where there are probably games where if I had a battle VIP pass instead of a nest ball on turn one, I might be able to just run away with it. So I could be losing some games or making games closer because of the fact of not playing battle VIP pass. But yeah,
Okay.
other cards that the two super rods I think is huge. Definitely playing the one switch, one escape rope has also been good since we do play um, our Lucario has two retreat, but usually if we need to retreat it, we can attach, use Roaring Resolve, put another attachment on to get it out of the active. Um, but in most cases, you're kind of wanting Lucario to come in, attack, and then die. And if it
Hmm.
happens to stick around, cool. Then we'll get a Garchomp and reaccelerate to it to have it as an attacker. But uh, the Bibarel having two retreat and the Brachion having three retreat being really important to have these cards. But if those get stranded in the active, you have to be ready to play for it. And sometimes I've just allowed Terrakion to either die and or I've just slowly accelerated into it to attack because it is a one prizer that we're okay with giving up. And that's, I think, a big part of what Garchomp does at the moment is that it's forcing our opponent to take multiple attacks, you know, in the upwards of 4 attacks, sometimes more, uh, to win a game. Where our play is to probably take a similar amount, but we're trading single prizers for two prizers with what Lucario can reach. And if we have to hit into a single prizer, Garchomp's 2 attacks, 160 through Hydrolander while accelerating. Sonic Dive, being able to snipe stuff if need be, also big, and also puts energy in the discard to where you could then Hydroland it onto other Pokemon on the next turn if you can have another attachment. Being very strong in, oh, cool, I need to take 2 single prizers. Cool, I will Hydrolander one and then I'll Sonic Dive the other, knowing that I have 2 Lucarios maybe built up to take two prizers. Yeah, that's kind of the thought processing behind that. While Terrakion is a card that I'm still working with because I was playing the Groudon from the new Paradox Rift that is. I was playing the Groudon, which hits just hard in general, but discards the energy. Uh, and I think that this card is good, but it uh, basically is a worse Lucario. Even though it is just a basic, it's just worse. It can't reach the same numbers Lucario can, but it can do similar things. But just kind of clunks up the deck to where Terrakion is almost the same effect, essentially, but doesn't hit as hard. But what it does is that it forces them to gust this around if they want to do damage the following turn. So being able to hit for 120, in a lot of cases makes a Garchomp Hydrolander reach 280.
Pause. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Or more of a definition for our audience and
Yep.
clarification for myself.
Here.
When you use the term gust around
Yeah.
in terms of Pokemon, explain what you mean.
Okay, so gusting is a term that I picked up on from uh it's from the old days of Pokemon. Boss's orders, cross switchers, counter catcher, even escape rope is a gust effect, which the original card that was printed that did that was called gust.
Ah.
So that's just using common Pokemon terms, and I appreciate you asking that because that is good information for everybody.
Yeah, I just think it was a good like defining moment for like what is the term gusting really referring to?
For
And
sure.
it's effectively swapping Pokemon out from your active, right? Or
Or
from the opponent's
them
active,
them
either
doing
one.
it. It's more them doing it. Like switches
Got you.
switches are you switching your Pokemon. Gusting is switching their Pokemon.
Switching their Pokemon.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like you said, counter catcher, boss, cross switcher,
Escape ropes.
escape rope,
Yeah.
anything that gets their Pokemon out of the active. Okay,
Some
I
are
like it.
choices like cross switcher, boss,
Yeah,
and counter catcher, but escape rope can also be very good. Iron Bundle being a new card that also is a kind of pseudo gust effect that can force their active to the bench, which is good. So essentially, the Terrakion can allow us to do some damage and then give us a turn to set up because if they have the gust, they had the gust anyways, and they were probably going to win bosses, something like that. They were going to win through that anyways. But this allows us to play the game. In that most recent league that I played, I went for a second Lucario instead of playing the Terrakion, and that is what eventually cost me the game. And we were both 2-0 at that point. We were only playing 3 rounds, but I ended up getting second place to a Gardevoir. Great player in Sydney. I played against her when I played Blastoise a few weeks back, and incredibly smart, very very strong player, and was a very good game. It came down to the point where she put me in a checkmate type of situation, and I had to. The only way I had an out was to dig for a boss's order, and I did not hit it. So it wasn't a checkmate. It was pretty close to checkmate. It was checkmate-ish. So yeah, it was a very fun game, and I had a lot of those where we were able to kind of make sure we were playing the game through and through, which is a big reason why I also like Garchomp at the moment.
makes sense.
Yeah, and Terrakion allows
I'm
us to play the game and play catch up, which counter catchers and bosses and stuff like that also allow us to catch up and play the game, which is great.
digging through your deck list here to see what I like what doesn't make sense to me.
Sure.
And like it's a struggle because everything I think the trekking shoes is the only thing I look at on this whole list and go like,
Yeah.
like it, that's the only thing I look at and go like, yeah, you could change that maybe. I don't know what's
So
better, but
so
like everything else just feels necessary.
so let's talk about trekking shoes because I wasn't sure. This is a slot that could have been at one point was an Iono and a professor's research. And
Mm-hmm.
then I think it was like an Ultra Ball or something as well, or like an extra search or an energy retrieval. Um, I've also considered Gutsy Pickaxe, which reads I reveal the top card, which so between that and Trekking Shoes is a big difference. So and I'll explain that here in a second. Gutsy Pickaxe reveals the top card, and then if it's a fighting energy, I attach it to one of my benched Pokemon. And I can attach that to anything, which is good. So attaching to a Terrakion or a Barrel that I need to get energy on to not allow it to be stuck in the active can be good. Also, attaching to a Terrakion or a Lucario or Riolu or something like that can be also really impactful because now Lucario can maybe it can Gutsy Pickaxe feels like it can deal a big KO with a Lucario
Hmm.
in an early turn, but that's like a little too turbo-y, and Gutsy Pickaxe has a lot of value early, but has very little value late in my opinion. Also, the reveal is a part of the card that I think is holding it back for me, where Trekking Shoes reads, I look at the top card of my deck and I decide if I want to put that into my hand or I want to put it into the discard. So it's giving me choice and I don't have to reveal that. So if I look at the top card and I want it, I put that into my hand, which is great. So now that's information that my opponent doesn't have. If I look at it and put it into this card, obviously now that's what they have. But then I can just pull
Hmm.
it and I can just pull the next card and that they don't know what that card is. So there's a little bit of that keeping that mystery to them that might they're like, oh, what did he draw there? Okay, cool, and then it makes the game it having that concealing that information I think is really good, and why I'm leaning towards trekking shoes. Also, trekking shoes allows me to dig. There are times where I look at the top card and it's like, oh, it's a Pokemon or it's an energy, and I'm okay, sometimes in the early turns okay with pitching those because of the two super rods so I can
Hmm.
pitch those. And knowing it's like, oh, this is a Garchomp, I already have a Garchomp in hand, cool. And if I've done a ball search or anything, I know that there's another Garchomp in the deck, or the three of them in there, or things like that. I know that I can probably pitch this one to see one card deeper that might be more impactful, that might reach me to a supporter or a rare candy or something along those lines. So, Trekking Shoes, I have liked. It's a card that I like again where I'm looking. It's like I wish there was a better maybe fighting type supporter or stadium
Yeah.
or search card or something like fog crystal
I mean,
would be awesome that is like a fighting crystal or
just
something would be sweet but that doesn't exist.
just kind of digging through like all the abilities of all of your, we'll call it core engine pieces, like Lucario's Roaring Resolve and the way his Aura Sphere Volley works,
Hmm?
and the way Hydrolander works and what have you. Uh, to me, looking at this, my first impression is two super energy retrievals and either another Iono or a research.
Hmm?
Just because of how often you're trying to discard, maybe not even super energy puts it what back in your hand.
Puts it back in the hand. That's why super rod is I think better because it puts it into the deck which I can then roaring resolve out.
Because there's not really any abilities that are putting energy from your hand onto your active Pokemon
Yeah,
or
it's from the
Pokemon in play.
discard
I should
or
be
it's
more
from the
specific.
deck and it's one manual attachment. So I'm not playing. There's nothing like Baxcalibur or anything like that. I
Yeah.
think most fighting types are usually from the discard. Let me.
I'm just
I
want like, do you go one up in Super Rod and two like one Professor,
don't know. Just
one
the triple
Iono?
super rod over the trekking shoes. I think there are
I
times. Yeah, go ahead.
the only reason I think of it that way is like with Super Rod for me a lot of the time when I'm only running one or two, I often get to a point if the game is dragging out longer in turns where
A third super rod would be
a third
insane.
super rod would be huge because
Sure,
I'm
sure.
looking at like we're down to one or two prizes each.
Yeah.
I've lost some stuff, they've lost some stuff. If I have more super rod potential than they do, I can put in not just let's say the energy I need to be able to
But
Garchomp them onto
also another Pokemon.
Lucario, but
Yeah.
also can get the Pokemon back in, so I can reset up another Lucario or I can reset up another Garchomp in that scenario. Whereas
So
with only two, you're like, all right, cool. Do I take three energy or do I take like a Garchomp and two energy? Like, what do I set up here? What's you're more limited in your choice.
So how I would try and give more information on that.
Yeah.
Garchomp being able to put the energy from the discard is sometimes where we don't always want it in the deck, right? So
Hmm.
our first super rod is often used to grab something that maybe we pitched off of an Ultra Ball or something in that situation, or maybe even an early trekking shoot, where the first one is used for that, and the last one is used to recur and make sure that the roaring resolves are hitting, and or if I need to find another manual attachment, I'm using that for energy. So the two seems enough because if I get one Garchomp online, I'm able to really accelerate a bunch of energy, where Terrakion comes into play because it doesn't remove the energy like it does on Lucario. And that also
Hmm.
buys us a turn to be able to maybe figure out what we are going to Super Rod for, and or setting up Pokemon to where I can manually retreat the Terrakion, go into Garchomp, and then re-accelerate onto Lucario or Terrakion. In that moment becomes really good because that immediately puts 3 energy in the guard when I retreat with the Terrakion. You could, in theory, attack with Terrakion, stall a turn, manually retreat it, go into Garchomp, and then re-accelerate all 3 energy back to Terrakion, and then the next turn do that again if you're surviving that long to stall even longer, even though that does give them essentially a turn to swing into the Garchomp or take out the Terrakion before it can attack again. But that's just fine. And often what has happened when they go after a Lucario uh, or a Gibble in before I can get into a Garchomp. As long as I had the first Garchomp, so they don't allow me to get into a second one, I still have the Garchomp, which is still threatening. And with its two attacks of 160 and 120, because 160 to 120 is 280, which is a really good number to hit if I am sniping using Sonic Dive. So if they try and you know get around me being able to continually Hydrolander and take a one-shot KO with a Lucario or something like that. This allows me to do that. Another part to consider is Hydrolander into a Aura Sphere Volley with um, with only 3 energy kills everything other than Blastoise in the format. That is that's 160 plus 190, 350. That's a really good number to hit. To be hitting. And so often, what I'm trying to do is recognize more situations to where I just don't keep hydrolandering. That's yeah, using hydrolander over and over and over
No,
again.
no, I like hydrolandering.
Hydrolandering,
Hydro. I'm
hydrolandering,
out here hydrolandering. It's terrible.
hydrolandering, and leaving a two prizer in the active. This often I can use the free retreat of Garchomp, which is absurd. Retreat, and then bring up Lucario and just smack. Also, if I in some situations I could bring up a Terrakion, smack, and he's protected, and that's still 280. 160 plus 120 is really it's an efficient number. So the numbers kind of add up pretty well, and the free retreat is still really insane. And one thing that I have often done is using Hydrolander to put um, 1 energy onto Barrel, just so it is 1 energy attachment away from a retreat to be able to retreat, so doesn't get stranded in the active. Is something I will often do in the later stages of the game. But one thing you have to be really good about is managing your energy to make sure that if you need to go for a one-hit KO on something big, that you don't put the energy into the wrong place, and now your Lucario, you don't have enough energy to take out with a Lucario. Yeah, that's a lot of the stuff that I've been doing with this one.
That
Also, Lost Vacuum. Card's insane.
it's so good.
I
Uh,
I think this is one of the best cards in the format, and it's not even close. And like, if you know it's not good in the format, it is easy fodder to pitch to Ultra Ball and get rid of. It is so simple to get rid of, and if you don't need it. But when it is good, against like a Brute Bonnet or the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule, even a Future Booster Energy Capsule, getting rid of a Path to the Peak, getting rid of. I've done it often against like a Chen Pao player where I know how important a Pokestop is. I'll use the Pokestop or maybe not, doesn't matter. And then before the turn is over, I'll just lost vacuum it and say, all right, you have less resources to find all those items that you need to find your superior energy retrievals or rare candies, um, to then to be back in the game. And that it's that ability for having this card be so incredibly flexible, I think, allows for it to be so strong in the format right now, and why have often found a way to put it into every list that I'm playing. I love lost vacuum.
Really good.
Very strong.
It's pretty much a one of in any deck that I'm playing right now.
But
Like the bare minimum.
yeah, I think just like I said, there's too many powerful stadiums and tools currently where I do think that we will see more and more where lost vacuum stock will continue to rise, and it being searchable off of Irida is also pretty insane.
Agreed.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's Garchomp. I mean, how wanna? Do you have any more questions? Do you have any more thoughts, concerns?
I'm literally scrolling through trainer cards right now, just like
What else? What
thinking.
else?
Yeah,
There
like
was one. There's one called Grant that is a fighting supporter. The issue here is Garchomp is water, and Grant only boosts fighting type Pokemon. So I was thinking about using this because you can just
mm,
play a one of and recur it, because you can pitch 2 energy and then recur it, and then now you're saying if Garchomp was fighting, it would hit for 190 and 150, which are great numbers, but it doesn't. It doesn't work for him. It only works for Terrakion and Lucario, so it just felt like, why would I have this in there when Lucario already swings for insane values of 130, 190, 250, where that's the number where you're like, oh, 250 to 280 is really good, but often that you're in those situations, you're going to 310 to KO, and then obviously 70, which
I guess I guess my
are
question would
pretty
be
close to
like,
70.
what are the top two decks that you would say Garchomp struggles against?
Uh, let's see. Decks that I've had issues with late is. Oh, let me pull up that uh, amazing spreadsheet my friend Zach Benson made.
Oh, hey,
I
I know
am
that guy.
super blown out because the sun's just beaming in on me. Okay. Roaring Moon has been tough, but that's been a lot of the turbo builds, and Chen Pao has also been a tough one, but I think I'm understanding that matchup a little bit more. Another like Lost Box has been another one where an early cram kill has been super tough for me. I am not too worried about like a late Sableye because if it's the single prize one, I just need to get Garchomp going, and that is like the utmost importance because um, it's going to be so many turns for them to kill a Garchomp where I can just one prize, and accelerate, and one prize, and one prize, and one prize, and keep going, and I can snipe stuff if I need to. I just have to focus that, and there have been games where I think I've thought about going into a Lucario and not prio the second Gibble, where they have the counter catcher or boss's orders to kill the backup Pokemon that I'm setting up, or they kill the one Gibble that I set up, where I go like Gibble Riolu, which is often what I'm trying to set up in turn one,
hmm
and I fall behind there. So I think I'm recognizing those moments of like, what deck am I playing against? Take against Iron Valiant, like another, like an Entei Valiant even. I can one shot Valiant or Entei easily. Hydrolander for 320 kills it easily. And in that build, Iron Valiant is attacking, so I can two-shot a Valiant, and I also can snipe a Valiant on the bench after I've done one Hydrolander to KO it. So in that game, I'm trying to limit my bench to having no Pokemon that they can Yoga Loop and get a Garchomp. In the league that I played, I used just a single Garchomp, and I hit Cross Witcher and the two bosses' orders I need to strand their Pokemon and then slowly take KOs. And I only needed was one single Garchomp that they weren't able to pitch the damage through, so that was a cool way to win. And that's just how you have to play that deck at the moment, is just eliminate their Entei's, which are their big attackers, and if you can limit your bench, that means Entei hits softer, and also if it's the Entei build, you got to be careful of Radzard because Radiant Charizard is a insane attacker, being 250 for very little energy, and Magma Basin being strong. So those are the big things. Yeah, I would say it's some lost zone decks that are just fast,
Yep.
that sputter out, and a few games where if I get a Manaphy set up against Chan Pao, I feel so much better because few games that I've played where I was like digging for Manaphy and don't hit it, and then I'm just like, cool, and they just go Radiant, and they go Brad. Brad comes up, takes us out, aka Radiant Greninja, our boy Brad. What's up?
Good old Brad.
Um, I just come up and I just lose right there. They just go later Gibble, later Riolu, later whatever at that point, and you're just like, well, it was fun. I didn't really play the game, so yeah, I would say that's been a big part. Oh, I guess like last point, with Miraidon gaining popularity at the moment, yes, Garchomp gets obliterated by anything in Miraidon just because of the Lightning Week. But a uh, uh, a 2 energy Lucario KOs everything in their deck outside of Miraidon and Iron Hands if they have a Bravery Charm on them. And if they have a Bravery Charm, you go to 3 energy, or you lost Vacuum it, and then just 2 energy kill, and you're using a 2 energy attack on a single prize Pokemon, KO a 2 prizer so easily because of weakness. That's been a huge, huge thing that has helped me in a lot of the Miraidon matchups, where I feel pretty strong about those. You maybe set up one Garchomp, one, and try and help it be an acceleration and do some chip damage and things like that, and force them to try and chase that down while you're setting up multiple Arios. And also, Terrakion hitting for 120 is 240. KOs everything that doesn't have a Bravery Charm, which is super relevant. And then
Gotta love weakness.
is invincible. So for a turn, and they have to gust around it. So another really, really strong play with that card. So Miraidon gaining popularity feels good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just trying like the point of my question was just thinking of like in place of trekking shoes, which is just general, we'll call it general card advantage, which is not
It is the
never a
most
negative thing.
flexible spot in the deck at the moment. There are 3 slots that this could be many
Yeah.
different cards, but I am liking it. I am
Would you
liking it.
consider slotting in some more? I don't know what you want to call it in Pokemon. Like I'd put it in meta hate. Like
Oh
it,
yeah.
like that. Hey, I know this is a bad matchup, so that's why these 3 cards have been replaced with XYZ or 2X and 1Y or 3X. Like
As I keep playing more games and I start to really understand what are my bad matchups, I think that will allow us to understand what these 3 slots can be. And if Trekking Shoes continues to be a card that is relevant late, because you don't hesitate in playing it. It's just like you play it because it gives you more information about
no,
what your plays can be. It's a very strong card. So
I feel like it's never a card you're gonna draw and be like, oh, trekking shoes. You're
yeah,
just like, oh, trekking shoes. I get to look at
2 more cards.
least 1 card,
Yeah, one to
maybe
two
2.
cards. Yeah, which is great. Look
Like
at
I
one
either
and maybe
draw
see
what
another.
I want, or I get to look at the other one after it and see if that was what I wanted.
Yeah, I think that's been why I've liked it. And also, there's so many times where you trekking shoes and see another trekking shoes. You're like, all right, well, just take the trekking
I've
shoes and go again.
done that many times.
Yeah, so
I
it
think I've
seems
done
nice.
3 in a row.
Nice.
I think I've hit 3 trekking shoes back to back.
Yeah, I thought it was a card that you needed to play 4 of, and then I saw some lists of like Roaring Moon and things like that only playing 3. So that was like, oh, I can play 3 because I was always like, I don't. If I'm playing Trekking Shoes, I want to play 4. But I think it's Trekking Shoes is
As a 3 of, it's fine.
very good as in decks that are currently not cramped on space, and Garchomp feels that way because we don't have, you know, auto includes like, you know, fog crystals and mirage gates and things like that are played in other decks. That's like you need 3 to 4 slots for these cards or your
Or
deck
else.
doesn't work. And in this deck, you're like, yeah, I mean, this could be 3 battle VIP passes simply, and
Hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily be that mad about it. But I think I still fall on that thing of like, well, if I don't draw, I could go probably down in a nest ball and play 3 nest ball for 4 battle VIP pass, and maybe that's better for consistency. But I also like trekking shoes as it sometimes can dig for support, sometimes can dig for a rare candy, sometimes can dig for something else that I need. I have liked that and never feel bad.
I
And
think the thing with
who
trekking
knows?
shoes is it's never.
Maybe next week I won't even feel the same way because I'm just not doing it. Yeah, what you're saying?
Yeah, I think with trekking shoes, it's never like if cards if a card's relative value in any deck is 0
Yeah,
to start, and some cards are going to be a negative value toward the overall playability of that card.
yeah,
I don't know, insert card name. You're not going to play Schoolgirl because it's bad.
yeah,
Its net value in any meta deck is in the negative integers.
yeah.
Um, but cards like, let's see, for you, Lucario as a very obvious one,
Mhm.
right? Value like
Absurd,
100. Like
absurd.
it is a required card.
Yeah,
I feel like trekking shoes is like a +1.
yeah.
Like it's always a positive number. You're never ever going to feel bad about drawing it. It doesn't hold you up. You don't have to make a decision on playing it over other supporters.
Yeah,
You don't have to make a decision on playing it over other stadiums. There's
just
there's
slam it.
no
You just slam it
there's no
every
deficit.
time. It's like when
Like
it's
it's
in hand,
I
it's
drew it, I
immediately out
play
of
it.
hand. Yep,
Yeah,
100%.
but that value and that value is not what's the word I'm looking for? There's no variable to how much value that card has either. It's not
Hmm.
like somewhat valuable against these decks and only this valuable against these decks. Its value doesn't change in the
It's
deck
the
overall
most.
dependent on
It's
the
like the most
matchup.
Switzerland card ever, right? It's
Yeah,
every matchup. It is a fine card. It
it's
doesn't.
just +1 all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess unless you're playing against Bennett, I think is the only card.
Okay.
Bennett EX where it's like Everlasting Darkness. During your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. So as long as I don't run into this
Oh,
deck, like then
like Venom off.
yeah, it's like don't run into that deck, please. And
I
it's
mean,
like
it's like,
those are rogue off meta decks, which like
yeah.
I'm playing a rogue deck essentially. I want to say I do think Garchomp is borderline tier 2, potentially like lives in tier 2 and functions there because it is strong as a single prize deck. It's just not being played and tested amongst better players out there. Same with Blastoise. It's like the cards are close to being relevant and good, but
I
they just
think
aren't getting over the line essentially. And maybe that's because they aren't being played enough, and or they just might be missing certain options that haven't been printed or may never get printed. So they might just live in that border place.
I think looking at your deck list with all the topic of the deck list that we've just like conversed over here, trekking shoes is not a bad pick. I think as you get more play data,
I'll know.
it is a card I would personally be looking to replace. I don't want to
Hmm.
say as soon as possible because there's not, like we said, a negative, like
And
there's not a
there's
deficit in
not, yeah,
value.
and there's also not like, oh, an inherently wildly better card. Right? They're
No,
all
but I think,
situationally better. And it's like,
yeah,
well, do we take situationally better or do we take always valuable?
always decent. Yeah,
Always
I
decent.
think
Always decent is a better term, yeah.
at least for me as a player, I would rather have those 3 cards be, even if it was 3 one-ofs in the deck that were
Hmm.
for 3 separate situations
Sure.
that help me with matchups that I either personally struggle with as a pilot
Hmm.
or just that my deck list struggles with regardless of pilot because the matchup is skewed against me and not in my favor.
Sure.
I think I just like, I've always been a toolbox kind of player regardless
Yeah.
of TCG, regardless of format, regardless of anything. Like I like having more tools because
At your
more tools means
disposal.
more decisions.
Yeah,
Like I have more options, and then it just comes down to me making those decisions and obviously drawing the cards.
totally. And that's one part about Pokemon where it's like you can have those tool cards in your deck where you have that one of, but it ends up being prized, and you
Oh,
having the deck, having the card, and having the
oh,
is like there was nothing I could really do. So yeah,
painful.
yeah, very. A couple things that I have been, and then we'll kind of let this be the wrap up of this. Some of the things that I have considered is cards like Glamora EX, which when I put it into the active, it makes their bench down to 3, which can, you know, force, a card like a deck like Iron Valiant to struggle essentially. The issue with that is you have to play the Clement, and the best Clement is a 40 HP, which is just Valiant is like, thanks. So it's like this is tough. If we get, I think there are other Glimets that are good, but this one allows you to immediately evolve it. So if you're when we get to the topic of going second, this is a big discussion point. But that's something I've considered. I've also played the Hisuian Decidueye V, which I love. It's Mountain Hunt attack, and also we don't run a V star, so going into the Decidueye V star is really good at being able to um, draw up to 8 cards, which is good. But it's another 2 prizer that just gets absolutely housed by Psychic Pokemon, and Psychic is very strong at the moment. Hisuian Arcanine V also very strong as just a absolute beater, and it could be a late game threat, maybe over Terrakion, since we can move the energy after we've loaded it up onto a Lucario, or the energy that we've loaded up onto in those situations to prepare, like off the barrel and stuff like that. This is a single. I could include this. This could maybe be in the Terrakion slot, but I think it it being a 2 prizer over the 1 prizer is where I'm leaning way more into Terrakion at the moment.
I like the
Because
one
of that.
prizer because
Yeah.
looking at your list before, my other thought was like, okay, but like, why not uh, Pidgeot, an extra uh, rare candy,
Yeah.
and then 2 trekking shoes, let's say, just
Sure. Sure. Just to.
for semantics here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but then it's putting two prizers in your deck that, even though
Garchomp
you're
being
only
the
going to play
only.
one, but
Yeah.
like
Garchomp being the only
limiting your
2 prizer is
prizers is
good.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've
I
really
agree. I
liked
think
that.
limiting your 2 prizer, like limiting your 2 prize options,
It's smart.
gives you efficient prize trading.
Yeah. Another card I've considered is a Ting Lu, uh, with maybe playing a Halucha, where I
Hallelujah.
can toss out some damage counters, and also the chip damage and the ability to snipe with Garchomp can be really good, where I can shut down a Barrel, I can shut down uh, any Pokemon that isn't an EX, which just seems okay, but also feels too cute, and the 4 retreat is fallacious. So that's why I haven't done that. Other cards, I've thought about adding a Squawkabilly, but then we get back to that 2 prize conversation. Ting Lu also being a really good, the single prize Ting Lu, not the Ting Lu EX. Being able to hit 220 for 3 energy is good, but the moment it gets damaged with how often that is out there, 4 damage counters from an Iron Valiant, so that's 2 Tachyon bits, and then the card is completely shut down, and then or retreat cost. And I think that's what's holding me back on a lot of the other cards is the 4 retreat cost is just brutal. So yeah, that's kind of where we've been at. Minior, if Snorlax stall keeps on the up, this is a card that everybody can play since colorless attack, but it's for weak. Can really mess that up. I thought about Slitherwing in some situations being an efficient 120, doing 90 damage to itself, but it's okay. 120 is solid for that. But burning the opponent can also be very relevant to that a little extra damage. Yeah, little things that I've thought about when it comes down to it. Raihan has also been talked about. Cheryl's been talked about, but just haven't liked any of them. I think uh, Calamitous Wasteland could be really strong as well. Of anything that is non-fighting, that is a basic energy retreat, its energy cost goes up, which could then make the Iron Valiants more difficult, essentially, because well, actually, I think even if they put the booster capsule, it's still a free retreat. Or I make that um, has no retreat. So yeah, we get around that. So this is not as good as I would like it to be. Probably strong against Lost Box and a couple other decks, but gonna have they just have it. But yeah, I think that's good. Garchomp talk. I think we need to discuss second. But
I agree.
before we get into that, I want everybody who's watching and anybody who watches after the fact to know that um, in the description below you will find our Discord, and the Discord is a great place. It's called the Pod. It is an amazing spot for games, disc golf, and just overall, community in general. That there's a lot of amazing humans in there. You can hype yourself up. You can post stuff if you want to share what you're doing with a community. That is a wonderful place, and we highly encourage that. Also, we are running a small series called Saturday Night Pokemon. Big thanks to Rainbowsmaug here of
Hey,
setting it up and getting it going. Fig helping out with some of the ideas. Um, that is a currently is a free entry into a best of three Pokemon tournament that is played through PTCGL, and we are giving away, at the moment, 2.5 code cards, or you know, codes,
pack
um,
codes.
pack codes, uh, per entrant. You pay nothing and then get to play in an event and have the chance to win some codes that can, help you set up a new deck and or just getting something for free and also getting some experience. If you want to test out a new deck against other people who are testing, and, sometimes people will bring off meta decks and or will just bring a fun meme deck, but that's what happens at every tournament you play. But it is a great place to be a part of that and get some games in and also be a part of a community. We often have a lot of really great Pokemon discussions happening under the Pokey Oakley section of it. And expect to see a buy sell trade place as well to where maybe make some cool trades and keep spreading the good word of Pokemon, of Arceus himself. Let me tell you about my Lord and Savior Arceus. Um, sorry, the god Pokemon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, with that being said, let's get into the other topic for today, which is going second. So, this has come up and been talked about a lot with um, some of the technical machines being included, whether the main one being technical machine evolution. So if you see you're up against a Charizard list, that might be this, that you see a Bidoof in the game one, you might want to go second because allowing them to use the technical machine is can really just put them so far ahead when they get a barrel online on turn two without having to do anything, and then also have a Charmeleon that doesn't need a rare candy, just needs to just be evolved into Charizard. That's where you really lose those games. So Technical Machine Evolution for those decks going second is good. They also can play a supporter on turn two, which is easily searched off of Arvin. That's just one of the decks. There are many others, like go to um, the one big baddie, Roaring Moon, loves going second. Frenzied Gouging or Calamity Storm on their first turn is so accessible. How often have you seen it, Zach?
Uh, Technical Machine Evolution.
No, Roaring Moon, turn
Oh,
one.
Roaring Moon.
Yeah,
Sorry.
with turn one
God,
attack.
it's like every other game.
Yeah, it happens so much.
I feel like it's literally every other, probably more than every other game.
They
Honestly,
always have it too. Like they always have it. They go Sadas into Dark Patch into Energy Switch into a Switch card, and then
it's
it's like bam, Roaring Moons. It's just slamming.
it's probably 2 out of every 3
Yeah,
games
yeah.
in
Which
my experience so far.
is why Roaring Moon was a very popular deck at LAIC, but did not do well. So I think Azul DG has said it. It's a two prizer that one hits your opponent's Pokemon. Why it's not really that good. Like Chen Pao is a two prizer that one shots your opponent's Pokemon, and there's a couple others like Goldango is a two prizer that one shots your
Mm.
opponent's Pokemon. It's like so there are many of those decks already out there that do that, and they still aren't really winning tournaments. Where when you look at Gardevoir, they have a single prizer that one shots your opponent's Pokemon in Shining Arcana Gardevoir. So that's something that I think is why I like Lucario, single prizer, that one shots your opponent Pokemon. So that's something of these. They seem really good, but aren't that good. But the fact that they can accelerate an attack on turn one, on your opponent's turn one going second, is pretty nuts. But I think the
It hurts
biggest
my soul.
culprit at the moment, um, the biggest culprit of the turn one nastiness is Iron Valiant currently. Of
By far.
It's insane how good it is right now. So if you don't know what you're going up against, there is probably merit in a best of three situation to choose to go second, just so you don't get blown out by Iron Valiant using Tachyon bits, building up stuff, and then easily swapping into Entei that is able to, with Magma Basin, just a couple pitch cards, which they play Squawkabilly, Professor's Research, and all these cards of uh, allows for you to uh, they are able to get energy into the discard, use Magma Basin, attach it to Entei. They have all these switch cards that then brings up the Valiants that do these chip damage, and then they just slam with an Entei. Very relevant. Also, I think one of the most gnarly cards is Metacham V and the Yoga Loop attack. One double turbo energy attachment, and this does it's two damage counters, so it's not reduced by double turbo energy, and if it knocks out the opponent's Pokemon, you take an extra turn. So what has happened often is they play these cards, they do all these switching, they get it up to your 70 HP Ridgebacks or whatever else you're playing, your Ralts. And then they're like, well, we got three on there. All right, switch, double turbo, Yoga Loop, kill the Ralts. And now they're like, all right, cool, get my extra turn, play another supporter, switch into retreat, get into an Entei, and they've already KO'd two Pokemon with you only playing one turn. And if you only had two Pokemon games, it's pretty wild. So those being the menaces of the format currently, do you think that this is enough for more players to just choose going second, even if their deck is better going first?
I would say over 50% of the time, it's probably a benefit to
Mm.
choose to go second, even if your deck prefers to go first. It's pretty few and like I feel like I'm still, if I win the coin flip, I'm still picking heads a lot of the time with Gardevoir, only because I feel like my
Picking
turn
heads or
one,
just going first?
uh, going first. I don't
Yeah.
remember what I said.
You said picking
I,
heads, and I was like, "Hey, dude,
I'm picking
this guy's
heads. I'm
this
picking
guy's
heads.
not a Tails believer. He doesn't
This is
believe
not
in
a Tails believer.
it."
Sorry. I am picking. I'm choosing to go first with Gardevoir.
Hmm.
Uh, specifically because more often than not, I have enough things to do,
Hmm.
card draw, what have you, Battle VIP pass, nest balls, etc., to get quite a good board set up on turn one that even if my opponent is able to attack on their turn one going second, it doesn't put me massively behind, and I'm not afraid to just losing like an active and a benched and then being out of the game
Sure.
to like an Iron Valiant and to Roaring Moon being able to just wipe something off.
Yeah.
I'm definitely being more cognizant of what I'm putting in the active off the rip when I'm going first than I would normally be.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that is specific to Gardevoir,
Yeah.
as I think there's just so many engines to that deck list that are, hey, let me draw like 9 cards this turn, and I probably will be able to fill my bench with everything I want, or at least
Yeah.
be pretty close, so that even if they can attack on turn 1, I'm not behind. If anything, I'm more set up to catch up with them having gotten a prize on their turn 1.
Yeah.
With every other deck list I've played, I'm pretty much just going second.
Yeah. Yeah. It just feels like that supporter option, like denying them the professor's research and
Mm-hmm.
you know, forcing them to have the squawk ability also feels like the place you want to be against these decks that are really strong and going second, and then essentially against like against the Charizard list, which they're still between Pidgeot, the evolution line. They're you're like, well, cool. I will if it's the Pidgey Charizard, you're fine. They probably prefer it, but at the same time, you're still able to play a supporter and play the game and try and get a really big setup to where even if they do KO something, it's not that big of a deal if they have a turn 2 Charizard. But against Iron Valiant, giving them no Colress, no Professor's Research, and forcing them in their opening hand to have the uh, to have the squawk ability or find the squawk ability, I think is asking more of the deck and hinders the deck and slows it down enough where you might be able to actually play the game, which is really what we want to be doing, which is what these decks are trying to, or what Iron Valiant essentially is trying to do, is be like, you don't play, GG, you lose. And is that did you
Yeah.
feel the same way when you were playing Snorlax stall? You wanted to go second so you could support her and
100% of the
set up?
time. If I
Yep.
got forced to go first with Snorlax, I was upset.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It's it's uh
Oh, no, there's
it's
another deck that it
so much
feels really
better to
good
go
to.
second with
Yeah.
Snorlax because you're not trying to evolve anything. You're not really setting anything up.
Hmm.
You're preferring to be able to not just battle VIP pass, but use any of your supporter cards on your turn 1 as well to help with setup. You also you only run 1 battle VIP pass in the deck, so you really want to be able to go like Arven, battle VIP pass, bravery charm into whatever else if you don't have that singular battle VIP.
For sure.
Uh, or Iono or whatever it is that you need to get battle VIP on turn 1.
Hmm.
And I think that's the what I found was the biggest thing for Snorlax was you want to go second every time because you want to be able to play a supporter. And in turn, it means that your opponent is putting something in and doing stuff before you preferably even have a Snorlax out a lot of the time. Or if you
Hmm.
have one out, they're limited on what they can do on their turn 1 to retreat or move stuff around without burning resources right off their turn 1. So
Hmm.
you end up setting up a more effective lock, I think, going second with Snorlax.
Yeah, I guess it still functions as some decks are they don't care. They need to go first. Maybe Gardevoir is one of those decks that's just like we don't care. We can play into these decks because you have level ball, battle VIP pass, nest ball, ultra ball, fog crystal to make sure you can set up and survive an Iron Valiant onslaught and still be able to get into the game going into your second turn, right? Essentially is what I'm kind of hearing about Gardevoir and of what you said. So certain decks just don't care. But there are certain decks that,
100%.
may prefer going first but get obliterated if they go first against a deck like Iron Valiant. So in those
Yeah, Serena is a
situations,
perfect example. Like
yes. Yes.
another deck that I've played my fair share of, like that deck wants to go first so bad
Mhm.
because if you don't get set up early, so many of the decks are going so much faster than you because you
Yes.
have so many pieces to get online to make the lock work effectively that you desperately want to go first. But if you go first in Iron Valiant, it doesn't matter how much stuff you're setting up unless you hit everything and like you got 4 battle VIP passes in your hand off the draw. like you're probably just losing on turn 1. Everything's in range.
Yeah. That's wild. It's wild to think about. So,
I mean, I love it. Like
yeah.
to have to work around things like Iron Valiant or Roaring Moon's ability to basically say, "Hey, I want to play second," and then just dumpster on you, especially with Iron Valiant. But Roaring Moon just being like, "Hey, I'm in a really strong position with a an active Pokemon that is attacking for enough to
Everything.
knock out most things or anything, depending on what I need to do here, and have enough HP that I am fairly unreachable by most other decks
Hmm.
on their turn 2 without a lot of like setup or drawing into the right things. Uh, I love having to play around that. I think
Yeah.
it's like I don't know if I would say it's good for the meta. I feel like comparing it to like Magic, it feels a lot um like the modern meta when Splinter Twin was really popular, where it's like, well, everybody's just it's you either playing Splinter Twin or you're playing against Splinter Twin. Like those are
Sure.
your options.
Yeah.
Uh, and I don't think that's bad for TCG metas in general, but I
I don't
think
either.
it requires adaptability from its player base
Yeah.
that I think is really interesting and it's fun to watch.
Yeah. So let's kind of swing this. Like, I don't. I think you need to, in most situations, if you do not know what your opponent is playing, choose whatever is better for your deck. Essentially, is kind of where we're
Yep.
landing on, and I think that that's just a general, like that should be a general rule and general assumption. But if you're playing in a best of three, or you're playing in an open deck list situation, uh, you can now make a decision to where, oh, if the matchup is unfavored for you, and you can deny them their slight advantage of going second, you know that the person across you is playing Roaring Moon, and you win the die roll game one, you may want to just say, I'm gonna go second. I'm gonna slow you down. I'm gonna play a supporter turn one, and I'm gonna do my best to get so set up to where I can withstand the onslaught and now play the game a little bit more. You might be able to make those decisions against Roaring Moon and Iron Valiant. Against Charizard, I don't think it necessarily matters. It's just it's more these two decks that Iron Valiant and making that decision can be you playing the game and not playing the game. So yeah, I guess that's the way I would word it is once you know, you can maybe make that decision, and a lot of it is going to come from trial and error of what you figured out in your own testing of no matter what, if I go first or second against Roaring Moon, it feels pretty equal. And so it doesn't necessarily matter, but then it's like every time I went first against Iron Valiant, I just got obliterated. So in those situations, maybe you're like, all right, I'm playing against Iron Valiant. I want to choose to go second as possibly. Once you know that, I think that's just where you're at, and I'm sure we will get a lot more information with the upcoming events. Which, speaking of, this weekend, if you're follow the Pokemon YouTube channel, the Gdansk European Regional is happening this weekend. It was pretty crazy to have the Latin America Regional and or no, it's the International Championship. The LAIC was this past weekend in Brazil, and we're going straight into another kind of big event that will be streamed. The time frame is going to suck because, by being that it is in Poland, the time frame is 6 7 hours off from maybe even 8 to 9 hours for some people off in time. Being able to watch the games, but being able to go back and rewatch their live stream, always do that. So should be fun, and I think that we will have a lot more information on what decks are killing it and what decks are, were overhyped, which I think will be very, very fun. The Yeah, going second still feels strong, and it's just do your best to kind of figure out what your deck wants to be doing. And I think that there are ways to build your deck into being good going second, being able to you play more Arvins and Iridas and things like that, and you can play, you know, really easy ways to search out cards that help you. game more. So definitely something to consider as well of your supporter. Yeah, I think that if the meta does start to tailor into that, so yeah, let me touch on that real quick. Something that I was considering into the going second uh, option of being able to play. You're playing Chen Pao. You're already playing Iron Hands. It's like, can you play Rotom? And I've seen some lists do that where you on because you're never attacking on your first turn, but just the sheer cards you can get from Rotom V being really good and allowing you to play it kind of feels decent. And it's not like you can't use the attack. You probably shouldn't. Iron Hands. But that was kind of where my thought was going. Is like you could maybe set up more decks to be okay with going second, just depending on the build. But does that make them inherently weaker or not? I think that's just where people need to test to figure that out and over the few upcoming events. And the next big one I think is San Antonio. Now we have one in Stuttgart, and then San Antonio back-to-back weekend. So after this one, we'll have a little break from big events, but we'll be seeing plenty. And I'm sure if you follow any big YouTube, many more top 10 lists and tier lists talking about all the decks that they think are the best. I love watching those, even though they basically say the same thing over and still fun to see what they have to say and how quick minds can be changed depending on how certain cards are playing. Yeah, you still so. What's up for you going forward? You think about bringing Guardy to S&P this week?
It depends on what S&P. Yeah. Sorry, brain is so all over the place. I'm thinking of like S&P in a month from now
Yeah.
for the 24-hour stream,
Yep.
and somehow thinking that that's this week. So you can tell I'm feeling a bit fried this week.
That's a tournament organizer if I've ever heard one. So and a stream organizer and a doing a bunch of stuff. Which this is a perfect segue. So he's probably playing Gardevoir this weekend. So come on by. You'll be able to
Most
play against the
definitely going
Guardian.
to be playing Gardevoir this weekend.
But that is a perfect segue, and we can say our goodbyes with this. On the let me pull up the exact date. On the 16th and 17th of December, right? We said 16th into the
Correct.
17th.
Saturday the 16th
Yeah.
through Sunday the 17th.
Which will be on it'll be Twitch streamed on A-Rock Oakley. I will grab you all a link to that right now and put it into the chat. Um, for those who are interested, my wife and I, with the help of Rainbowsmaug, are running a 24-hour charity stream with tons of disc golf giveaway. We'll probably be doing some Pokemon stuff to give away as well. But it's a 24-hour charity stream where we are raising money for Feeding America. And that is a way for us to give back to the community and to try and help people out in all across the country and just help them. So spread the word on that, share it around. We have other links to other places that'll get you more information on the charity stream in general. That is something what we're doing on the 16th and 17th of December, running 24 hours straight. We are doing a midnight Central Standard Time Pokemon tournament to help us rush through those late night hours when we start to get super tired. It'll be a perfect time for Tina to get a nice little nap in, so she can take the morning session, where she'll play some Roller Coaster Tycoon or something like that, or Roller Coaster Simulator or whatever it is. Either way, lots of fun to be had. Come on by. Tons of giveaways every hour if you're into disc golf or find cool things to give away. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
I think that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, that was our second episode. I think we're going to try and bring maybe Pokemon Menace or Firestarter or somebody from our Discord on for next week's talk to give them a chance to talk about the deck. And we will probably poll the Discord for future topics of things that people would like us to discuss. So we continue to interact with you guys as the community and make some cool things happen. But yeah, we're gonna try and stay honest with this and keep it going and really do some fun stuff for Pokemon and just fun stuff for I think for my brain and your brain, Zach. This has been
100%.
just fun to just do anyways, right?
100%.
Yeah,
Like I think we were talking about this off stream the other
yeah,
day, but I feel like with Pokemon, I finally have like a grasp of the meta of a game,
yeah,
unlike other TCGs I've played, and being able to actually sit down and like go through this and go through it over and over and over again and like really deep dive it is so satisfying and so much fun.
yeah. Couldn't agree more. It's yeah, it's also that like level of like we will do this type of conversation in Discord for 2 hours and it not be recorded. Like, well, that was really good content, but we didn't
Maybe
do
we should
anything.
have just recorded that.
So that's what led to this. And as two people who are newer to the Pokemon trading herd, um, it's nice, but we've played card games and games in the past, so this is a way for us to kind of one expand our knowledge and try and be better about the game as we start to play more and we play more events and we get out to bigger events and who knows it we might never see the light of a top 32 or top 16 or a top 8 finish at a big event, but who knows, maybe we're out there winning events. It's a You have to start somewhere, and no matter where you are in your life, I highly encourage everyone to go for those things and just enjoy what you get to do with it and enjoy what you get to do with life in general. It's well worth the time to invest, even if it is just something fun for yourself. It is worth investing in yourself. So, everyone be kind to yourselves. If you're celebrating Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. If you're anywhere else in the world, hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. And thank you, Zach, for being here. And we're going to catch you all in the next one.
Can't wait for the next one. See you guys next week.